Bahamian doctors end a prolonged strike. That's our top story in Caribbean Newsline for Thursday, December 6th. From the CMC News Center in Bridgetown, I'm Nicole Best. Good evening. Doctors in the Bahamas are back on the job after more than a week of industrial action. Treasurer of the Consultant Physicians Staff Association, the CPSA, Dr. John Dillette, said the association has reached a tentative agreement in principle with the government and the Public Hospitals Authority. He said there are some minor matters still to be sorted out, but the major financial matters have been agreed upon. More than 100 doctors across the country withdrew their services on November 27th, expressing concern about working conditions, a lack of health insurance, and a salary increase. Senior physicians initially requested $250,000 annually as a base salary, but CPSA President Dr. Loxley Munro said they were willing to accept $75,000. The association's treasurer did not provide details on the government's counter proposal. Jamaica's Prime Minister Andrew Holness is contemplating criminal sanctions for those linked to the scandal at the state-owned oil refinery Petrojam. Director of Communications in the Office of the Prime Minister, Robert Morgan, made the revelation following the tabling of a report by the Auditor General highlighting glaring breaches of procurement procedures, nepotism and wasteful spending at the state entity. Morgan said the Prime Minister received the report on Wednesday and has promised to speak on the matter soon. He also disclosed that Holness has identified some aspects of the report which require urgent action, and he is not ruling out a forensic audit to determine whether criminal liability exists. The private sector has called for someone to be held criminally responsible in two of the findings unearthed by a comprehensive audit of Petrojam and the Petroleum Corporation of Jamaica. The opposition People's National Party also wants to see a forensic audit carried out, and they're also calling for more action to be taken against those in breach. We get the details in this report from TVJ News.
Need to dig deeper. It's what the former state minister in the Ministry of Science, Energy and Technology, Julian Robinson, is suggesting in light of the shocking findings by the Auditor General on Petrojam.
There is going to be a need for a forensic audit in some cases and the intervention of the police in other cases where there may be criminal wrongdoing on the part of individuals. I would also say that some of the individuals who have been named, who have been separated from the company, need to be held accountable for some of the expenditures that took place under their watch. And I think there should be a move to seek restitution in examples where funds have been spent on things that have been totally inappropriate.
Mr. Robinson pointed to the grand spending on events which had nothing to do with the operations at Petrojam, like a party held for the former chairman as well as Energy Minister Dr. Andrew Wheatley. But what's clear in the Auditor General's findings is that some of the breaches at Petrojam occurred under the previous People's National Party government. And with that, Robinson, who is now the party's General Secretary, argues that action must be taken where any wrongdoing is found.
Where persons would have acted inappropriately, and in some cases maybe criminally, then those people have to be held accountable, whether it happened under the PMP or in this case under the JLP.
But he was quick to point out that many of the breaches took place under the current administration. With the Auditor General's 114-page findings showing clear breaches at Petrojam, the question being asked is what needs to be done moving forward.
You know, you have the strategic direction, you have to strengthen the institutional framework so you don't have a case where a general manager, as in this case, can make decisions without reference to the board, can breach guidelines, and is allowed to do that. The Prime Minister has set up a committee, the ZACA committee, to look at the future of Petrojam, its strategic direction. We hope to see something coming out of that committee which can give some guidance as to how to go forward, because the nature of the energy industry is changing.
Anthony Lugg, TVJ News.
Still in Jamaica, state of emergency detainees have alleged harsh conditions while in lockup, and they say the police only showed the media what they wanted them to see. We get the details in this TVJ News report.
It was a detention to remember for a 30-year-old man in St. James who spent almost a month at the Freeport lockup.
When you sleep, that's you eat, that's you defecate, that's you urinate, that's you brush your teeth. And if you, that's you wash your plate.
This was when?
on August.
We reminded him of these images of the holding area when the police took the media on a tour last Thursday.
That's the right part they show, man. They don't show the part where you want to show them. They now carry upon the cell block. And carry in the cell and make them see how in the look. They now do that.
That was where he was stationed, in a crammed cell, sometimes with 9 people, and there was no running water.
Concrete have to sleep on. You have to look if you have clothes to put out on the concrete to lie down from. You're not getting a comfortable sleep down there.
Another man over 50 years had that and more to deal with.
For mine time, 2 slices of bread, add sugar and water about 10 o'clock, 11 o'clock in time. And about 5 o'clock in the evening, you get some broke grain white rice with also chicken skin and heart and everything chopped up in it. Chicken neck, everybody mix up.
Then there was the soup, state of emergency flavor.
Well, I don't call that soup, I call that ginger beer and pine skin.
Why you call it ginger beer and pine skin?
Kind of food in it. I just ginger alone you taste. Nobody no take care of it, just dash you. So you bike.
You throw it in the wall?
A bike.
What's a bike?
They defecate, you know.
They call it the bike because of the way one has to position over it. And when one is riding, it's in the full view of cellmates. Makeshift curtains from scandal bags and clothing are not enough.
How you flush the bike?
This one string come through. You know, then set up about one string come through. Like a shoes lace come through.
So you flush it by what?
You draw the card, and you hear let off.
The card ever break?
Yeah, man, the card break, man. All 9 days, man, you have in there. The 9 days have in there. After beer, the stench.
Abuse from the police was another issue. 3 main weapons were used, including a baton to hit them.
Some pepper spray your eye, and come was wet up in your cell. You have to have your bag up your things then, so they don't wet up.
I'm afraid of police than anything else right now, you know. Believe me. Soldier alright, I understand. Police are bigger bad man, the biggest bad man in Jamaica.
What about your mental state?
You're in kind of trouble, you know, but you have to just firm and strong, you know.
So what you do to deserve all of this now? You're a bad man in that area?
No, you're a bad man, but I dead already. You're not bad man. Bad man don't have a restaurant and run and cook for people.
All 3 detainees say they have never been in conflict with the law. They tell me they were drinking in a yard, having some fun, when the police took them to the lockup for almost a month, even though they had identification. They support the report from the Office of the Public Defender and were disheartened when some parliamentarians voted not to hear directly from them at the Internal and External Affairs Committee.
You know, I hear fury cry. It's just all about them. You understand? When election come now, at that time they want to run to it. And we put them which part in there.
Haiti's former head of police, Godson Aurelius, has been charged in connection with an illegal arms shipment, and the lawyers representing him are threatening to take legal action against the investigating judge probing the case. Their move comes after Aurelius was slapped with several charges related to the September 2016 seizure. Justice Daniel Lumerant, the investigating judge, had been probing the illegal arms that were seized at the port of St. Mark. Customs and police officials had searched a truckload with used items from Miami when they discovered and seized a large quantity of weapons, ammunition, and various pieces of military equipment. Aurelius's lawyers contend that he had been asked to appear before the investigating judge as a witness, only to be later charged. They also said the examining magistrate had refused to decide on their request for denial of justice. Former West Departmental Director for Police Vladimir Parision, who had also been questioned by the judge, had also made a request for his removal on the grounds of legitimate suspicion. The former Minister of the Interior, Reginald Delver, is the latest former Haitian official to be questioned in connection with the illegal arms shipment. And still to come in Caribbean Newsline, Trinidad and Tobago getting international assistance in its assault on crime. Stay with us. There's more news after the break.
Renowned for its pristine beachfront and fantastic weather, continues to leave quite an impression on newcomers to the island and returning visitors. The Caribbean island, quite popular as a vacation hotspot, is not only beautiful due to its natural aesthetics. The island of Barbados continues to grow in popularity because of unique connections developed with our people, our culture. We can't wait to welcome you.
And sleep. We couldn't wait to jump in the street. 365 every dog in the heat.
Trinidad and Tobago's National Security Minister Stuart Young says crime fighting in the Twin Island Republic has been receiving some international help. Speaking to reporters on the sidelines of a major security conference, Young said some of the country's foreign partners have contributed to recent successes by local law enforcement.
What you all have been seeing over the past few weeks are a number of intelligence-led operations that fortunately for law-abiding citizens of Trinidad and Tobago have been successful without any casualties.
We spoke with Minister Young after the opening ceremony of the Caribbean Nations Security Conference. A major theme of the conference, cooperation among the various defense forces along with the United States military. As the minister said, there are several threats facing the region. Among them, he said, were natural disasters, the illegal drug and firearms trade, and terrorism.
We look forward to the continued relationship with the United States and the role that you will play not only in intelligence sharing, but hopefully as well in operations.
How much intelligence sharing is taking place between Trinidad and Tobago and the United States? And how much of that is leading to any of the recent successes that the government and the police are saying are occurring in law enforcement?
Trinidad and Tobago, under this administration, has rebuilt the relationships not only with the United States, but also with Britain, Canada, and a lot of other allies, and they provide us with intelligence. The operations and intelligence-led operations you all have been seeing over the last few weeks have had a small element of international assistance.
He commended the men and women of local law enforcement for the work they have been doing.
A $30 million lawsuit filed in the U.S. court against Sandals Resorts, Bahamas, has the attention of hoteliers across the Caribbean. The lawsuit was filed by a couple who allege that the wife was inappropriately touched by a butler, but the accused butler, who had a stolen reputation both at work, where he received many awards, and in his community, says he has been framed. He says his life and the lives of his family members have been turned upside down by the blatant false accusation. Hotels throughout the Caribbean are taking keen interest in the matter, and the St. Lucia Hotel and Tourism Association is closely monitoring the multi-million-dollar lawsuit. The SLHTA is backing misconduct policies already in place for hotel staff as a safeguard against litigation and to protect workers. We get more in this report from HDS News Force.
St. Lucia Hotel and Tourism Association executive Nurani Aziz says the local hospitality industry is paying close attention to a reported $30 million lawsuit filed in the United States in November by a New York couple who in 2016 claimed their private butler employed at Sandals in Nassau, Bahamas, where the two vacationed, sexually assaulted the then bride-to-be.
We would do well to pay attention to how this case unfolds. Notwithstanding the outcome, however, it is important that private sector companies take stock and to upgrade and to ensure that their training modules and that their training programs are in sync with the times, and that it has evolved in the manner in which our engagements and our communication have evolved.
Sandals, who is a member of the SLHDA, operates 3 hotel properties in St. Lucia and annually receives thousands of guests from around the world. Those guests, as in the case of St. Lucia's other hotels and resorts, would very likely interact with and would be tended to by locally hired staff. The SLHDA has vouched for misconduct policies already in place for hotel staff throughout its membership.
It is not something that one takes lightly as a private sector. It is something to be taken very seriously because employees' behavior is a reflection on the company. And unfortunately, when employees do not comply with certain standards of behavior, the negative impact and repercussions can be felt by that company as well.
In the lawsuit, plaintiffs John and Ashley Pascarella alleged Sandals employee Moral Adderley stealthily entered the couple's bedroom after they returned from a cocktail party that evening and groped and fondled Ashley. The private butler accused and later convicted of indecent assault in a Bahamas court was immediately fired by Sandals after the guests filed the complaint. Despite his admission to the charges in court, Adderley gave a contrasting version of events on the night in question. He told Bahamian Press that Ashley, while sitting up on the bed, asked him for a hug before he left the room. Adderley said he complied and was later pursued by John Pascarella, who accused him of touching his then-fiancé's bum.
What is perfectly acceptable as body language or communication between two persons from one cultural background may be totally unacceptable when engaging a person from, for example, the Far East or the Orient. And our team members have got to be so mindful of this.
In a November 28th statement to US-based People magazine, Sandals blasted the Pascarellas' accusations as, quote, self-serving, one-sided, and incomplete, end quote. Sandals is anticipating the courtroom showdown and said it's, quote, looking forward to presenting the full picture of all the facts, end quote.
Guyana's President David Granger is back in Cuba for further treatment following his diagnosis with non-Hodgkin's lymphoma. The president sat down with the local media before leaving Guyana. We get this report from Handel Duncan of HGP Nightly News.
President David Granger has left Guyana for Cuba. On November 20, President Granger returned from the Spanish-speaking country after spending almost 3 weeks there and was not seen in public since his return. While in Cuba, President David Granger was diagnosed with non-Hodgkin lymphoma. He commenced treatment, and that treatment is expected to run until May 2019. Before leaving Guyana, the president spoke with the press and publicity unit of the Ministry of the Presidency.
First visit, I had not only the biopsy, but a series of tests and examinations. And I also had my first cycle of chemotherapy. I now have to return for succeeding 5 cycles. So this is the second cycle, and I hope to return much more quickly than I did at the first visit, because this is simply the administration of chemotherapy. So,
all things being equal, the president is expected back in Guyana by weekend. Then he will leave again a little later this month for the 3rd cycle of treatment.
But I expect that by the start of the new year, my progress, which has been gradual so far, will be sufficient to allow me to take on more duties.
One thing is certain, that is, the majority, if not all of the country, continues to rally around the president for improved health.
I think my illness, although personally unfortunate, has brought forth a response by the Guyanese public, not to a politician, not to a political leader, but to a national president. I think they feel that the presidency is what has been jeopardized by this threat to my health. And I think what I've seen so far, both privately and publicly, is a very favorable national concern that the head of state, whoever he may be, should enjoy the best health. And I would like to thank people in the Caribbean, other heads of government, business leaders, my own colleagues.
The president remains grateful for all the prayers he has received. He is also encouraged, since he thinks the psychological and psychic factors are important.
And ahead in Newsline Sport, the Cricket West Indies boss blasts the regional side for its performance in recent Test series. The details of that story and more after the break.
And you have on your website you have a lot of information. Would you mind giving our audience that website so they can get information on injuries that are caused by lawnmowers?
One of the websites is ridinglawnmowerinjury.com, and another website is mowerlawyer.com.
We have the case that we're going to be talking about today concerns your client, Ethan.
Yes.
Next time on Coalition Corner, financing the response.
It is no surprise that, as you mentioned, about 75% regionally of the expenditure for the HIV response is from external sources.
But what will happen when external funds dry up?
The Global Fund or other multilaterals aren't just jumping up and leaving. To a large degree, many countries received adequate notice.
The question for us, where does the responsibility lie?
Don't miss the next Coalition Corner.
Cricket West Indies President Dave Cameron says Test cricket in the region will come under the microscope when the board meets this weekend. The cricket boss made the comments as he criticized the players for their performance in the longest format of the game. The Caribbean side was defeated in the recent 2 tests against Bangladesh in 3 days. They suffered a 64-run defeat in Chittagong in the first test, while the hosts scored a record innings of 184-run victory in the second test in Dakar. West Indies also lost both tests to India last month in 3 days. Cameron has appealed to players to step up their game.
Everybody wants the game to be over in 3 hours, and we all want to get rich very, very quickly. We have a board meeting this weekend. We have to make some serious decisions around our West Indies cricket first policy, because part of our challenge is that we're having players who going in and out of the system. They're not fit enough. We've spent millions of dollars on bringing them to where they're at. And we need players to commit to West Indies.
The CWI president feels the region needs to be a bit more vocal in its call for better cricket.
It's not an outcry across the region because West Indies is not one country. If this was South Africa, we would not allow our players to be playing other events when West Indies is playing cricket. There'll be a national outcry and people will be banned and all kind of things. But it's okay. And we seemingly don't have the moral authority to force people to play for us, even though we've spent millions of dollars developing these athletes. And so I think we need some kind of a public forum where everybody can get behind us.
And former Trinidad and Tobago West Indies wicketkeeper David Williams has described as a shame the West Indies' performance in Bangladesh. He said, and I quote, "It is difficult to beat India in India. We didn't play as well as we could play. How could a Bangladesh team make 508 runs and bowl us out for 113, then bowl us out again for 213 on the same pitch? There's always pressure when you're facing 500, but to make 113 is ridiculous. It's really a shame, to be honest, as to how the guys are playing. They're trying, but we have to do better, especially against the lower-ranked teams. We need to make sure that we win these matches. Bangladesh would continue to go past us." End of quote. Bangladesh is currently 9th in the ICC Test rankings, 1 spot below West Indies. Meanwhile, West Indies veteran Larry Gomes has added his voice to the criticisms leveled against the Caribbean side following their recent defeats. Gomes, who played 60 tests for West Indies during the late 70s and early 80s, was a guest at the past cricket Cricketers Society dinner and award ceremony at the Queen's Park Oval recently. He attributed the struggles of the current team to the lack of exposure to county cricket in England. The 65-year-old left-handed batsman refused to blame the ascent of T20 cricket for the team's current plight and instead urged Cricket West Indies to take steps to improve the standard in the longer format of the game. Gomes said he was saddened to see how far West Indies have fallen in the rankings. And that's the sport. Stay with us. We'll be right back.
What better way to experience true Dominican culture? Join us for Taste of Dominica 2018 from October 19th to November 30th. Experience diversity in Dominica's cuisine, yeah! From street food to inspired chef creations to herbal teas and of course, Dominica's famous bush rums. Taste of Dominica is a culinary delight for all foodies. Collect your passports today and get a chance to win amazing prizes. Visit discoverdominica.com for details.
People always ask me where my favorite place to jump is, and I think they're often surprised when I tell them it's Florida. There's something about the weather here that, you know, every afternoon usually just builds these amazing structures, and you can kind of go cruising through the clouds at sunset.
Tonight I vacate this chair for the last time for a while, and I wish to take this opportunity to thank you, my Caribbean people in the region and in the diaspora, for allowing me to enter your homes almost nightly for the last 4.5 years. It was a pleasure bringing you the news that matters from around the region and sometimes from around the world. And as I take another step in my professional life, I encourage you to continue supporting the Caribbean Media Corporation and Caribbean Newsline in the thrust towards regional integration through information sharing. To all of you, thank you. Good night.